The e-resource of this episode is Rosetta Stone. With Rosetta Stone, you can learn to listen, read, write, and speak a new language. The Rosetta Stone Library Solution teaches by context clues and interactive feedback through your computer, tablet, or mobile device. You'll find Rosetta Stone in the e-learning section of our e-library, JocCoLibrary.org/e-library.
I can tell you that if I needed a special book that I didn't have at the university, I had to go to the public library. And then the experience was that you had to be there early, very early, like some people, 6 a.m. or before. Stay in line and wait for the time when they open, maybe 8 a.m. It was at that time. Now it had changed.
Okay. Wow.
And we had to wait like hours in line to go to request a book. At that time, I think we do it with just writing it. And then you go to the specific place where you sit, and maybe 2 hours after that, you got the book.
JocCoLibrary Uncovered.
Hi, Charles.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, I know that we both love to learn, and our audience loves to learn, and the library is a great place to learn, for sure.
Yeah.
And this week, our topic is Latino Services.
Yes.
Well, it's actually Libreria versus Biblioteca. And I know I'm not pronouncing either of those words completely correct. But you'll get the correct pronunciation by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
But, because we are lifelong learners and we love to learn, sometimes this podcast, it kind of blows us away because there are things that we just didn't know, and we continue to learn. And this time, I got to admit, I really knew nothing about libraries in Latin America.
Yeah. I know we had talked before about doing a Libraries of the World episode with our different staff members we have.
For sure.
And
maybe we'll still do that.
Yeah.
I would love to.
That would be, I think it's still an interesting episode, especially after all that we learned for this one.
But why not start with our neighbors to the south?
Yeah.
For sure.
And because we have staff members who work with Latino Services outreach here at the library.
Right.
Figured we would speak with them and try and get a sense of how the perception of libraries can differ based off of your background and your experience with libraries.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we're talking about Latin America, we're generally talking about the entire continent of South America, but also Mexico, which is North America, so Central America, the islands of the Caribbean, just really any place that speaks a Romance language we call Latin America.
Right. Yeah. So even though we recognize there are different cultures and different cultural heritage from each of those countries, that we are talking about it in general under that common language group.
But with the understanding that libraries in each of these countries and cultures may be very, very different. So that's going to be very interesting to hear in this episode.
Yeah.
So let's jump into some interesting facts about Latin American history, especially when it comes to libraries.
Yeah. So the first fact we have here, during the golden period of Maya civilization, also called the Classic Period, which was from 250 to 900 AD, long time ago, the Maya were believed to have large libraries filled with books.
And it was said that the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan had become such a splendid city, according to records, it dazzled the Spaniards. The Aztecs had an advanced, prosperous civilization, and though it was speculated that the Aztecs had libraries, not much is known about where the Aztecs actually kept their records. And so conquistador and eyewitness Bernal Diaz mentioned seeing a whole house filled with large books.
Yeah, and so part of that, like we said, believed that the Mayan had large libraries, speculation about the Aztecs' libraries, that a lot of that is because the Spanish arrival meant that the pre-existing Mesoamerican books and libraries were often destroyed by conquistadors and missionaries.
Well, let's fast forward to today, where hopefully nobody is destroying any more records. Right. Did you know that there are 7,413 public libraries in Mexico?
Also, the Biblioteca Nacional do Brasil in Rio de Janeiro is the largest library in Latin America and the 7th largest in the world.
Wow. The Biblioteca Palafoxiana, and by the way, we're not familiar with any of these names, and we're trying our best. So if we butcher the pronunciation, we apologize. Yes, we're sorry. So anyways, the Biblioteca Palafoxiana was the first public library of the Americas, and it was founded in 1646. And that was created by a bishop named Juan de Palafox, and he donated 5,000 of his own books to the Catholic seminary that he had created in Puebla, Mexico.
And the National Library of Colombia is generally considered to be the oldest national library in the Americas. It was founded at the end of the 18th century in 1777 by Viceroy Manuel de Guerrero, who established the library in the city of Bogota.
And then there's Johnson County and the Johnson County Library. Not in Latin America, but we do offer Latino services. And so when we were asking our staff to pitch ideas for the podcast, one that was very interesting was pitched as Libreria versus Biblioteca. And I don't want to speak for you, Charles, but I felt like we were just like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
But it sounds, you have my curiosity. You have my attention.
Right. Yep. So we wanted to learn more about that, and we will come back with that topic and a couple guests right after the news.
Library News.
And a hearty welcome to our guests, Christine and German. Let's start with introductions. Christine?
My name is Christine Peterson, and I work at the Central Resource Library, which is the main library for the Johnson County Library, and I am, at this time, the Latino Services Outreach Librarian.
Very good. And German?
Thank you for inviting us. And I am originally from Colombia, Bogota, and I work as a information specialist for adult services now. Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're joined by our old friend Charles.
Hello again.
How you doing? It's good to see you and hear you. Okay, so today's topic is kind of broad, but I think ultimately this is about what Johnson County Library has to offer the Latino community. And I think the place to start is the word library itself. Mm-hmm. And in Spanish, oh my gosh, Charles, working on the website, we have all kinds of difficulty translating for a Latino population because none of us speak Spanish. And so oftentimes we would enlist the services of German and Christine here, and sometimes others, but they've been such a big help for us to rewrite content and provide good content for our audience. So let's start with the word library then. We will share in our show notes a video by German, and it's forgive me, is Univision Kansas City? Is that?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And you did a bunch of videos for them. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
When I was working, normally it was at Oak Park, and we have many interactions with Latino population. We used to do the outreach activities for all the Spanish population, and we go to universities, to radio stations, to TV.
Yeah.
And we just were talking about the library, the services that we offer to the population, Spanish population. And I ended going there, and they offered me to do something about the language, but it was not officially for the library. But I did that. But it serves to the Latino population and whatever wants to learn about that.
Well, they're wonderful and informative videos, and so one of them is about cognates, which was a new word to me, but from the way you explained it. So a cognate is a word that is related in origin to another word, such as in English we have library, and in Spanish there's a word that kind of looks like library, that is Libreria. Can you define Libreria for us and actually pronounce it the way it's supposed to be pronounced?
Okay, correct. Christine, let me know, but yeah, we talk about that with Christine many times, and the word sounds really similar.
Yeah.
Library and libreria.
I was not even close.
Yeah, but the cognates are the words that are similar to in meaning to other words in different languages. Then you can have a cognate of a computer. You can say computador because it's from English and the origin is the same one. Then it's easy to know that is a television. Then there are many words that they are very similar. But sometimes, and that's the situation with that word specifically, which is biblioteca and libreria. But about that, I think Christine can explain a little bit more.
Well, we know them as false cognates because they sound the same, just like embarrassed and embarazado. Or we could say simpático and sympathy. Those are false cognates because simpático...
What do those mean?
Simpático means someone who is nice. And sympathy is to show some kind of an emotional understanding to someone in maybe a sad situation and taking pity on them. Okay. And so... Embarazado means to be pregnant, but embarrassment means to be embarrassed, to be feeling guilty. Wow. Or so those are false cognates.
Yeah.
And library and libreria are false cognates. And yes, we have over hundreds of words that are similar and mean the same thing, but then we have those false ones, and you need to be very careful.
Well, let's dive into that false one. So what, and I have trouble with the pronunciation. Libreria?
Libreria. Libreria. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what does that mean?
A libreria in Latin America is a bookstore.
Oh, no.
And at a bookstore, you purchase materials. They usually have a coffee shop. You can sit there and read materials, or that's usually where they go to buy their school supplies, is at a libreria. But because the two words are so similar, when Latin American Spanish-speaking people come to the United States, they believe that because we have books at the library, it's a libreria. But I explained to them that this is a biblioteca. And that's, we do not sell books here at the Biblioteca. We lend them to the public.
So if I can summarize what I think I've heard is that one is really a bookstore and the other, Biblioteca, is actually a library. Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right. So now that definition of a library, I feel like those of us that have grown up in the United States have a pretty standard understanding of what a library is. Tell me about different folks from Latin America that may come to this country. They might have had a different experience than their interaction with an American library than what they experienced in their own country, and there might be differences in libraries from country to country in different Latin American countries. Is that true?
Yes, it is, and it depends where you are from.
Okay.
And in my case, I just from Bogota. I was born in Bogota, and I went to the university in Bogota, and we have, of course, a biblioteca or library in at the university, but also we have a public a library, and then I used to go there. But many people at that time, because it was a long time ago, I think 40 years ago or so.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. It was so different, like the situation that we have in the United States now. It had been changing in Bogota. But at that time, I can tell you that if I needed a special book that I didn't have at the university, I had to go to the public library. And then the experience was that you had to be there early, very early, like some people 6 a.m. or before, stay in line and wait for the time when they open, maybe 8 a.m. It was at that time. Now it had changed.
Okay. Wow.
And we had to wait like hours in line to go to request a book. At that time, I think we do it with just writing it. And then you go to the specific place where you sit, and maybe 2 hours after that, you got the book.
Oh my
because there were
goodness.
many people waiting for the book. And then you have only 2 hours to read that book.
Oh my gosh.
And if you compare now with the situation, is other world. But in Bogota, I had been coming back to Bogota for a long time, and now they have big libraries. Normally, they do not have a small library like Oak Park or something like that, but there are big libraries, and they have many good services, and it's different. It's very similar to what we have right now. They can take the books home. Sometimes they send it through the mail. The
Yeah.
books, you just reserve them and they send the books. But we had to have in mind that we have like 10 millions of people in Bogota, and it's another world. No, you can compare maybe with Mexico City or New York or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think we do not have the quality that we have right now in Johnson County. Because Johnson County, we are just lucky, really lucky for all this coverage. No, you just have a little library and get your books. It's really easy, and we have many copies. And but now I can send you later some pictures, some maybe a video or something about what it is in Bogota now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the world is different. I lived for some time in Ecuador too, and
Okay.
it was very similar than Colombia.
Okay.
And I don't know how it's right now, but I know in Bogota we have many libraries. Even the Biblioburro is a book that we have here. The translation to English from Spanish is the experience of a teacher in Colombia in a little town that they didn't have any libraries because it's far from any city. And then he was a teacher, got some books, maybe 50, 70 books, something like that, and bought some books. And he started taking these books in a donkey, put the books, going to the farms and give the books to the children.
Oh,
and
wow.
And he comes next week, maybe, or 2 weeks after that, and then take the other books and bring other books, and we have a book about that at the library.
Oh,
It's
that's
the
fantastic.
Biblioburro. Is the
Oh,
title.
we'll want that title for our show.
He receives a lot of donations from all over, and now he has 2 burros. Alpha is the name of the first burro, and Beta is the name of the second burro. And it is very interesting how those who are familiar with reading, who are educated, and want other children to be exposed to books, the efforts that they make. My experience in other countries with books, when I went to Tlaxcala, Apizaco, Tlaxcala, they had a small building, and there was a desk at the entrance, and there were pictures all over the wall that children had done, and there was a young lady there, not a professional librarian, but a library staff person. They had 4 computers that people could access the internet, and there in that same room with the computers, she had boxes of books that the children could look at, and they were children's books. And then off to the side was a set of stairs that went up into the reading room, and it was locked with a fenced type gated fence. And you had to request to have her unlock it, and you go in there to look for the book that you want, and the bookshelves were from ceiling to floor.
Wow.
And there was a big long table in the center of the room, and you'd get your book and you would sit down there to read that book for about 2 hours that you didn't get to check it out or take it home. And she told me that she received her books from the Mexican Association of Librarians out of Tlaxcala, the capital city of the state, and they would already come cataloged, and she would make sure that they were in their place, but they did not get to check any books out. And then when I went to Guadalajara, there the university was just beginning to make part of the university library a part that would be open to the public, and they wanted to begin story times for children. They had also acquired a bookmobile they were going to take to the schools, and they had asked the group of us, we are from Reforma, which is a group that is supported by the American Library Association, and we were there for the Guadalajara Book Fair, and we had a meeting, and they wanted to know, how do you conduct a children's story time? Because they had never done that, and they were getting ready to do that. And that was probably about 10 or 15 years ago that they had begun that. When I was in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, there was a little library upstairs above a store, and these books were donated from people in the United States who would mail them to this organization, and they would have those books there that you could check out. That was kind of an interesting little library. And then the library that I saw in the Philippines was in Manila, and it's expressly a children's library, and it's just for children, and it's huge, but it's just for children. So they do have access to libraries, but as Herman says, you have to live in the city because that's usually where the library is, and if you have no way of getting there, then you're out. You don't have branches everywhere where you could go and be at a library to borrow books.
And I can tell you, Christine, now have been a lot of changes. You know, around the world, everybody has a phone and connection to internet, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And then it changed because now they can have classes, just with the TV and some kind of connection and access to many books. And that's a good part about the technology. Yeah. That's wonderful. We had some things are not really good, but this is one of the good ones.
Yes.
And they can access in little farms and little towns, and they can have classes, and it's better.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have lack of more money, I think, to buy things, more computers and better schools, and the schools here are like heaven, no? Big schools. The schools that we have there, they are not that good. Some are good, but no average.
Yeah.
So it sounds like some of that difference in resources translates into those like more closed stacks you were seeing, which is a library term for the listeners of like the books on the shelves were behind that locked door for you. So you had to get access through the librarian. So do you see some of that bleeding through into the perception of the work you do here at Johnson County with the Latino Outreach Services, that perceptions of people coming to the Johnson County Library for the first time, maybe they have experienced some of those other systems and they have a different perception coming in?
Oh, yeah, definitely. All the time we receive when some immigrant, not just Hispanic immigrant, but they just say, what is the cost of the library card? Oh, no? Can I take DVDs home or movies?
Yeah.
And they're surprised. Can I take the books? And many times I receive those opinions about them. They say, no, do not worry. You just fill the application. And many times they do not sign for a library card because they think there's a cost.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And there
And they
are
don't
still
know.
some who come into the library and they'll grab a book off of the shelf and they'll sit down and they'll read it for a while. And then when they're ready to leave, they will put the book back on the shelf backwards, not so to see the spine, but to see the pages there, because the belief is, or actually that's what they do in their country, they put it in backwards so that when they come back the next time, they'll be able to find that book because that's that book that they had put there. So there are still some that don't understand that they can have a library card at the Johnson County Library and they can take books home and it's free, and DVDs and music and so forth.
So some of those basic things that we have come to know all of our lives, but it's a new concept to a lot of these patrons. I feel like that brings us to this question, and that is, how does Johnson County Library serve the Latino community? And we started getting into that, but let's just talk about all the things that we do at the library, all the services and resources that are available, and maybe some of the stumbling blocks that patrons have encountered.
It changed. It's kind of a difficult question.
Well,
I have been in the middle of
we're
that.
a hard-hitting podcast.
I have this is a podcast. It's complicated, but it changed. Before
we can take our
we
time
had the
and
opportunity
go
to do outreach, to go to and everything, sort to, and all the changes that are coming is a new philosophy, new way to see the things. But we used to do many things around that, like talk at universities, Christine, many times, schools. And creating organizations even with programs from the library, book clubs that we do not have anymore, but still there I participate in at least in one or two. Also we have the Latino Writers Collective organization that started also with meeting at the library, but we do not have these programs anymore.
Okay.
It has been changing.
Okay.
And I do not want to do critique.
No, but that's okay.
It changed.
I feel
what
like
I can say is it
we
changed
could
a lot.
Spin that into a positive, though, and just identify things that we feel like maybe we should be pursuing in the future.
And we do,
it would be
because we see so many different immigrant groups that take up our communities in Johnson County. And we noticed that with that diversity, it behooves the library to offer something to help immigrant groups, not just Spanish speaking, although there are many Spanish speakers who want to learn English, and some other immigrant groups have had that opportunity to learn English in their home countries. But we do have English language classes that we offer. We offer them in person on Saturday mornings by trimester, which we're getting prepared for our next trimester to begin in September. And we also continue with the virtual online English language classes because during COVID, many asked us, can we continue to study English? And so we presented a pilot program, and it came to fruition and has become an online program for different levels of English once a week, also that is sponsored by the Johnson County Library. There are many families in Johnson County that have said, and I believe it's because of our exposure to the immigrant groups, many people, the families have asked, can you do a bilingual story time? And so I do bilingual story times, getting ready to begin those in September also, so that their children can be exposed to another language and that they can understand a little bit more about culture and how people differ from one another. So that's one of the reasons why I present a bilingual story time. Yes, we offer citizenship classes because there are many immigrants, not just Latin Americans, but many immigrants who have been residents here in the United States. And according to the USCIS, which is the Homeland Security and Immigration, they say there are over 8 million permanent residents in the United States who are eligible to be American citizens. They just haven't found a program that they can get into. And that's why we offer that program to those who want to seek citizenship here in the United States.
So what are some of the other stumbling blocks that patrons might encounter that we might be able to help them with?
For me, it's collections. And of course, it has to do with money, and it has to do with who's going to decide what that is going to be purchased. And of course, there are some groups that say, well, why just Spanish? Well, to let you know that Latin American Spanish-speaking people make up the biggest minority in the Johnson County area, and that's why Spanish can reach many of the Spanish-speaking countries throughout the world, so that's why Spanish language materials are always welcomed here at the library. When you talk about Asian groups or other groups in the Middle East, you're talking about various languages, and sometimes those books are a little more difficult to come by. But Spanish language books can be, and I have myself been pushing many years without success, but that is a drawback. The Spanish language collection that I believe we could have in the Johnson County library system, I believe it could grow. I think it could become more of a vibrant, viable collection if only we were able to put in some more money and effort in that.
I appreciate your passion and vision.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't think that we are going to have a lot of German speakers or Japanese speakers to have collections or something like that. Then the Spanish population, we said in Johnson County, from 8% to 12, almost 14% in some parts of the region, and they need those books. Mm-hmm. There's no way that they can read other way or watch a TV program or whatever, or learn something, and that's why we should have those services. Like other countries, no, like I can say like Canada, they're bilingual, and it's not a problem. It's just something. If you speak another language, it's better. But we get to the point now, like before, like long time ago, like now Spanish speakers, Latino population, they are saying to the children again, better do not learn Spanish. It's better that you speak English. It's better to. Then it's a big change. And we saw that change, and it was reflected in many parts of the society in the United States. And it just is complicated.
But I also try to find a workaround. And I'm very grateful to the Johnson County Library for including, because my passion is for children's literature and that they would have access to that. And parents can read to their children and share books with their children. But one of my workarounds is with Tumble Books and Bookflix. And those are electronic resources. Right. And they do offer books in Spanish that you can listen to. The illustrations are there. So I always lean some of my parents towards that. Now, of course, there are those parents who hesitate to expose children to that technology, but it is another resource. And that's one of my jobs, is also to look at resources that are available for the Spanish-speaking, newspapers in Spanish that might be online, any kind of educational help that we can find in Spanish, such as Lightbox, or we even have, it's not tutor.com anymore. I don't remember what it is now, but the homework help type resources that we can offer to students who speak Spanish and maybe have some kind of an advantage with using those. So I always am ready to promote those and promote them to the adults also, so they can have those for their children.
And it makes me wonder what I can do in my job. On the web content team, I feel like we need to go through all of those electronic resources. We have such a broad and wonderful e-library. And, as you were describing, I don't know just how many of those have a Spanish option and how many resources are available within each of, those categories we have in the e-library. And so I feel like we have kind of put that on the patron. It's like, well, you find out if it's available to you. But and granted, there are only so many people on staff, and we only have so many hours in the day, so we can't do everything that we want to do. But I do feel like it might be beneficial, since we've been working on a new Espanol section of our website. It'd be great to say, hey, here are all the different places on our website with resources that are in your language.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up something, Dave, that makes me remember that if you're going to put up a signage anywhere in any place that's supposed to serve the Spanish-speaking, use the signage in Spanish. Yeah. Don't put the word Spanish. They're going to walk in and say, oh. But if you put the word Español, that's going to call their attention, because they'll say, oh, Español, so they'll head over there to whatever section it is, whether it's in the children's or in any of the areas that we would like to draw their attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we are closing out here, getting towards the end of our recording time that we have. But just to wrap things up, what kind of final thought do each of you have for our listeners out there? Christine, do you have one you'd like to share?
I would encourage all of those who are listening that if you know someone in your neighborhood, or you've come to become acquainted with someone who speaks Spanish or is an immigrant, and you know they could benefit from some of the services of the library, introduce them to the library. I have in the past received messages from people who say, I have a neighbor who would like to learn English. And so if you know of someone who might benefit, or their children, or even bring your children to bilingual story time, do so, because Johnson County Library does want to extend those services to the immigrant populations, the Spanish-speaking community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great. Herman, I have a question for you. How many years have you worked at the library?
I worked for almost 14.
14 years.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So Herman is leaving us. And this Friday, in fact, once this podcast comes out, Herman is off to bigger and better things. But I want to say thank you for your service as a librarian. I have enjoyed working with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. But it was a great experience to find a job close to books. I was so lucky to find that. I love that since the beginning. Even when I was a page, and you had sometimes the time to look any book, any title, and you can, of course, place the hope or take the book, and that's wonderful. Close to books, and we made many great programs for the community.
Yes,
and I'm so proud of many things that we did here at the library. And I love and I was so happy. I had many happy moments at the library, and I always like Johnson County Library.
Yeah. You'll be hard to replace, and perhaps we will never replace you, but I feel like there's got to be some positive direction moving things forward because of the work that you've already done.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. There's more JocCoLibrary Uncovered to come.
So I think we started off this episode by admitting that we didn't know a lot about libraries in Latin America. And we end the show by admitting that we don't know a lot about Latin America and libraries, but we've learned a little bit more today, and hopefully we have whetted your appetite, and we admit our appetite is whetted as well, that we want to learn more. And I feel like what I thought I knew about Latin American libraries is not based on any kind of experience or facts. And so I want to reach out to more people from different countries, not just Latin American countries, but around the world, and to hear their experience and hear what those libraries are like, and that love of learning and literature. And thank you so much to Herman and Christine for coming in today and sharing their experiences with us.
Yeah, thank you to you both. I did want to point out one other resource. I think we mentioned it briefly in the show, but if you go to JocCoLibrary.org/Espanol, you can see our website with some of those programs and resources that they were talking about, how Johnson County tries to reach out and serve our local Latino population.
Right. And so if you know of any Latino citizens, please let them know that at web address. And again, that's JocCoLibrary.org/Espanol. And on that site, you will find a website page that is in Spanish, and you will get introduced to our collection, to our e-library, to our research section, all of which have options in Spanish. And then for fun, you might learn another language through Rosetta Stone or Mango Languages. There's Consumer Reports, Udemy. There are some courses that are in Spanish. And Canopy, there's a lot of titles that are in Spanish that are available to you as well. This page is also really helpful if you're looking for resources for citizenship or other types of learning.
JocCoLibrary Uncovered.
If you enjoyed today's topic, you just might be interested in these recommendations from our collection. First, it's Charles' Choices.
And today I picked out a couple books that I think might be interesting to our audience. The first one is called Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which is a kind of a Gothic horror title by a Latino author in our collection. It's a very popular book in recent years, and I appreciate that we also purchased this one for our Espanol collection. So you can find that in our Espanol collection under the title Gótico. So Mexican Gothic or Gótico, which you'll find in the show notes as well. And my second selection was Our America, A Hispanic History of the United States by Felipe Fernandez Armesto. And that one is just kind of a tracing some of that. If you liked those facts that we did at the top of the show, a more in-depth discussion of the history of the United States from the perspective of Hispanic history.
Next is a Dave's double feature, and spoiler alert, I'm going to send you over to the streaming video section of our eLibrary. That's jocolibrary.org/eLibrary. Go to streaming video and you will find Canopy. On Canopy, there's a title called Guia Denise Naval. And Guia Denis is dragged to Mexico City by her mother to help her in work as a housekeeper for an upper middle class family. There, the subtle psychological subjugation inflicted by the white family functions as a metaphor for the oppression of the old world by the new. Yet Guy Denis rejects the life of servitude and seeks her own identity through a friendship with another rebellious teen. A striking contrast to Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, Guy Denis Naval is a unique coming-of-age narrative exploring the racism inflicted on indigenous people in Mexico and the empowerment of a new generation that refuses to accept it silently. And Charles, I want you to know, I didn't just come up with that off the top of my head. I was actually reading that, but that's
so smooth.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, yes, that's the description from Canopy. I want to make sure to give credit where credit's due. Also on Canopy is a series of episodes called Visiones Latino Art and Culture, and this series explores visual art, performing arts, music, and dance as a way for you to discover Latin American culture.
Very interesting. So if you're interested in those, you can find them and a full list of our book report recommendations on our webpage, JocCoLibrary.org/uncovered.
JocCoLibrary Uncovered is a production of Johnson County Library and is recorded at the Central Resource Library in Overland Park, Kansas. We would love to read your thoughtful emails at uncovered@jocolibrary.org. Join our online conversation at facebook.com/JocCoLibrary. Look for us on Twitter at JocCoLibrary. Our website is jocolibrary.org. Subscribe to JocCoLibrary Uncovered through your favorite podcatcher or go to jocolibrary.podbean.com. Thanks for listening, and come back in 2 weeks for more JocCoLibrary Uncovered.